Welcome to Beyond Distribution with GTDC podcast. In today's episode, Frank Vitagliano, CEO of the GTDC, chats with Meg Brennan, who is the former VP of Global Channels at Riverbed and a member of the GTDC's Vendor Advisory Council. Meg shares her thoughts on the benefits of software vendors partnering with a channel to help with their go-to-market strategy. Meg and Frank also discuss dynamic changes in the industry, including workforce diversity and mentoring opportunities, and the evolving world of digital transformation. Looking for more valued industry resources and additional podcast episodes? Visit the GTDC Knowledge Hub at www.gtdc.org. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to rate and like.
Welcome, everybody, to our next edition of Beyond Distribution. I am thrilled today to have Meg Brennan, VP of Global Channels from Riverbed Technology with us. Meg, welcome, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Frank.
Yeah, so Meg has been part of our GTDC Vendor Advisory Council really since I've been here. So it's, 2-3 years, I guess now. And so has really been instrumental in helping us kind of shape the agenda and the activities, and we appreciate your involvement, Meg. So I thought what we'd do is start by, getting the audience and actually me to know you a little bit better. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What was your first job in the industry, et cetera?
Sure. So I am VP of Channels at Riverbed Technology. And basically what that means is that I take care of all of our core global channel functions. So strategy, programs, operations, enablement, go-to-market, all of our incentives, things like that. And I've been there about 7 years, just 7 years this month. And it's a great company. We are focused around unified observability. And what that means is, we help our customers see every digital interaction, whether that's on the network or whether it's with an employee or whether it's through a customer. We can help see that and improve it. So Riverbed's known for accelerating the network. And that's one of the things that we can see is where things need to be accelerated, not just on the network now, on applications on the cloud, and we can accelerate that as well. So it's an exciting place to be. I have been in the tech industry really almost my entire career. My very first job, I worked for a company called Quark, which is still around. And I was one of several temps that were hired. They were doing a major upgrade where we wrote down all the orders and faxed them over, manually faxed them. And soon after I was hired full time, and I actually sat on a dealer sales line. So I was answering calls and taking orders from Ingram and Marisol.
Wow.
So that was my first introduction to the channel. I was probably 22 or 23 years old.
I thought I was the only person in the industry that still faxed, that remembered things being faxed. So I'm glad to hear there's somebody else there. But of course, you did it at a pretty young age. So yeah, that's great. Meg, one of the things that I think is really important and is becoming increasingly important are all of the DEI initiatives that, are going on in the industry. And I know you're very involved, with women in the channel and, just in your role as a senior executive, in the channel, what is some of the, advice you could share with other women that, that are in the channel, either getting a start or, trying to become more engaged and more involved in, in what's going on?
Yeah, and I am absolutely passionate about DEI across all categories, but I do, really as a woman, right? That's what hits closest to home for me. And, I still remember, in my early jobs thinking, oh, I don't ever want to be, like I'd be a worker and I'd say, I don't ever want to be a manager. And then I become the manager. I don't ever, I just always, but once I got close to it, right? Once I could see what the job was, I knew I could do it. And so what I would say is don't eliminate things from, your view, because it's likely that you can do them. No one is smarter than you. No one, you just have to learn. Like once you learn that step right below, usually you're really close to getting to the next level. So think about that and make sure you don't just do good work. For a long time, I thought, oh, if I do really good work, keep my head down, people will recognize me. And the truth of the matter is that you have to tell people what you want. And I have an analogy, I can't remember where I heard it, but that, executives sit above, right? And everybody below has an umbrella over them, right? And so unless you lift your umbrella, they have no idea what's going on. So you have to somehow lift your umbrella, tell people what you're doing, even when it feels awkward. And even, you try and do it so that it feels less awkward, or do it on behalf of other people. Women are really good at doing that. And men too, right? Do something on behalf of somebody else to help them get recognized, and everybody rises together.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a good analogy, because, you're right. And plus, the other thing is, in the tech industry, certainly when I started, there just wasn't a lot of representation. I mean, there were probably, I remember back at IBM in the early 70s or mid 70s, early 80s, when I was, getting started, it might have been 10%, if that.
Yeah.
And certainly not in many of the real high level executive roles. And it's great to see where we've come from that, right? But I would also say, and I've had this discussion with a lot of female, high level female executives, you actually have to work it, though. It just hasn't evolved, the way naturally. And one of the things that I'm really happy to see, and I know you're involved in it, is, the work the channel company does started with Women in the Channel, and that's really exploded into an incredible event. And, I know you participate in that. Yeah.
Definitely. I participate in that, and I think that they've had huge impact. So I think channel roles, especially at the executive level, it's still not perfect, but there are a lot more women. It's not, in the tech industry right now, in executive roles, they say it's about 9 or 10% female. In channel roles, it's much greater. And I give a ton of credit to organizations like the channel company. I also sit on the board for the BAPTI Channel Focus Women's Leadership Council, and they do a lot of good work there as well. I think that these organizations really have moved the needle for women.
Yeah, I think they have. And the other thing that it enabled, which wasn't as easy to do, was it enabled the collaboration among the female executives in the industry. And that's important, right? Because then you had a forum to sort of get together and share stories and talk to each other and learn from each other's experiences, mistakes, or positive activity, right? So
yeah, and it allowed women to develop networks.
Yeah.
So where it can be very hard, right, to do that kind of out of work networking when you have small children, when things like that. And so those sorts of activities, I know for me now, I know all of these women that I've met through all of these events, and if I need a new leader for operations, I probably know someone, or somebody else that I know in my network needs somebody, I probably can recommend someone. And before it was kind of hard to find those people. Yeah. So it really does help. That network really helps us with our careers.
Yeah, the network piece is really important. People are shocked that, in such a massive industry that we play in, it's really pretty small in terms of, the networking. And you do. I mean, like, for example, when we were at our event, we had 53 vendor executives. And next year, when we have it, we'll probably have more than that. But what happens is everybody kind of knows each other,
yeah.
And they've met, they've talked, they've had similar experiences. I found over the years that the relationship piece is the most significant and really most important part of the role. And you mentioned it earlier. I did the same thing. I used to think, if I just put my head down and do my job, things will play out well. Yeah. And that has to happen. That's kind of, the basis for all of it. Yeah. Right. But there has to be more. And the more has to be the networking, the getting involved in the groups, mentoring, and I think that's really important too. So
yeah. And absolutely, I think you have to ask for and tell people what you want, where you want to go, and whether that's a conversation with your manager or your mentor or sponsor, is to say, hey, here's where I think I want to go. What do I need to do to get there? And really listen to their advice. Yeah. Because you can get there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, terrific. Well, good. So let's transition over to the business piece of it now a little bit. So you mentioned, the Riverbed and what Riverbed does transforms data into actual, actionable insights, accelerates performance. You've been involved in the cloud, forever, right? And so and the software side of it, and you've seen, that transition. And you mentioned digital transformation, which, at one point I kind of felt like was becoming an overused, term. Everybody want to talk about digital transformation. But the truth of it is, it has been incredible what we've gone through, and you guys have been at the forefront of that. So tell me a little bit about that and your thoughts relative to that and what's transpired over the last, couple of years relative to, where we're going and where we're at.
Yeah, I agree that, I felt the same way about digital transformation, right? Being an overused term, but it's absolutely true, right? What companies are going through to move from on-prem to the cloud is a huge shift in the way business is done. And of course, we all know the pandemic, dramatically accelerated that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have technology that allows, companies to see what's happening, with their employees. And, they can see if the laptop's working well, they can see if it's performing or if the employee has an issue with performance. And, if we wouldn't have had that 5, 6, 7 years ago, and, with that shift to everybody working from home during the pandemic, right? Tools like that were vital. And, along the line, all of those tools really have helped. And I don't think we're going back to the office, by the way. I think that, to be honest, it's allowed for more diversity in employees, right? So you can have employees where commuting could be very difficult, whether that's a, parent, or whether it's somebody with a disability or somebody who lives further away from the offices. I mean, when I was working out of the San Francisco office regularly, we had employees commuting, 3 hours round trip every day. They will not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like they just will not. So I think that the digital transformation is only accelerating more now. So pandemic accelerated it. Oh my gosh, Chat GPT and the capabilities of AI and machine learning. I think the world is going to look dramatically different in probably 3 years. It's already starting to look different.
I agree with you. I think the hybrid approach is clearly the right approach, because I have experienced the exact same stuff that you have, where it just was hard for people, and there was no break, because you got an hour commute, which is probably more normal than 3, but that typically meant you're on the road at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. You don't get home till 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and your life seems to be just consumed by that, right?
Yeah.
But one of the questions I would have relative to that is, and I think I know the answer, but I want to talk to you a little bit about it. So in terms of younger folks who are kind of getting started in the business, and one of the things that we were able to experience is there is some camaraderie, there is some, and certainly advantages of being in an office and being around people and talking to people and doing that.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts there? Do you think that is, we're going to lose that, or are there other ways to sort of, mitigate the issues associated with that?
I don't think that we will ever have that in the way we used to.
Yeah.
So, which kind of makes me sad, because that is one of the things I've loved about being in an office.
Right.
And I do think it's wonderful to, have those relationships. It's hard to find a mentor virtually. Right. So, but I have been remote now for more than 10 years. And I manage a team that's been mostly remote the entire time I've been at Riverbed, and even before that. So I think it's doable. You can have a good team culture. You just have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And you have to really think about, touching base more frequently, because you don't see people in the, getting a coffee together. You have to, kind of almost artificially touch base. And tools like Slack and, other instant messaging tools help a lot. And, you kind of have to create mentorship programs so that people who wouldn't normally have that mentorship get it.
Yeah.
And if you can get together in person for a few days, it helps. It helps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So basically your point is you got to work it, and you got to work it just like you'd work anything else. But now you know the environment you're working in, so therefore you adjust to it.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's
It's just a different approach. It's just a different approach. And good managers are good managers. They stay in touch with their employees, and employees stay in touch with each other. I have a great team, and we've all been remote, and we all really like each other, and we all really get along, and we celebrate. Unfortunately, we don't get to go out for drinks, frequently, but we celebrate birthdays and things like that still.
Yeah, it's funny you said that last point, because I was thinking about my early days. There used to be, I was in downtown Boston, and there used to be, I think it was a Houston's, or I forget the name of the bar, but every night there would be folks there kind of hanging out for a while before they either took the train home or whatever. And so we've kind of lost that, but that's what the events are for, right? That's what that's what the sales kickoff meetings are for, and the quarterly sessions, if it makes sense to bring people in. That's what you have to do.
You just really have to be intentional about it, and get people together where you can, but where you can't, and not every role is appropriate to go to a sales kickoff or things like that. Right. You just have to make sure that they feel connected.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So in terms of your role, and I'm familiar with it, obviously, having done it for 3 different companies.
Yeah.
But it's challenging in this, in this period we're going through, because there's so much transition happening, so many things going on. What are some of the focal points? What are some of the things that you're focused on in terms of either the technologies, your program objectives? What's happening from that standpoint?
Yep. So I would say we are heavily focused on getting those partners who are relevant to us and we are relevant to them, which is not every partner in our ecosystem. Right. Making sure they really know what we do, making sure they understand that we can help their customers save money right now, by eliminating unneeded assets, or reducing the number of licenses for software, right? It's a simple thing, but if we can make sure that those, and it's a small group of partners, right? It's the 80-20 rule. If we can make sure that 20% of partners who is close to us really knows that, and then when they're having conversations with their customers, that they can identify opportunity, we can come in and really help. So we, have a very involved sales team. We're an enterprise level, technology. So we're selling usually into the large, medium enterprise. So we have a great sales team, great SEs. If we can have partners who can start to identify those new opportunities, that'll be a huge win for us.
Yeah, and you mentioned the team, and one of the things that I experienced over the years was depending on the company you work for, everybody has a hybrid, for the most part, has a hybrid go-to-market strategy. Even if the companies kind of say they're all channel, they still have a direct touch sales organization. They might just deliver, through the channel, right? But you guys have been part of the channel forever, and that's been part of the fabric of the way the company was built. Talk a little bit about that.
We are a channel first company, and our preferred route to market is through distribution. And it saves us enormous amounts of kind of that G&A, time and money, and just the basics of what a channel does for us is it just helps us go to market faster. Our deals that, we have very few deals that ever go direct, but those take a lot more time than a deal that goes through a channel where all the credits already set up, all the, licenses pass straight through. Everything is just so much smoother when we do it through a channel. So even when, and a significant amount of our business is business that we find, but our partners have the relationships, they know who to contact with the customer, they know how to get things done at the customer, and we need that. So, and our distributors, right, know the partners that work with those customers. So we definitely leverage our channel heavily, and we, have been working more with our channel. And Really, probably about 25%, 25 to 30% of our business now comes from the channel. So they bring the opportunities to us.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And so basically, that's a business that's identified by the channel, and it's
Yep.
kind of no touch business, I would assume, with your folks.
Sometimes
you know,
there's a touch. It just depends on the profile of the customer.
Yeah.
We'll support absolutely wherever it's needed.
Yeah.
But if a partner can has the skills and can handle the entire sales cycle and ideally, right, go on to deliver customer success, we are delighted and we will
Yeah.
reward them, greatly for being able to do that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you mentioned distribution.
Mhm.
Clearly, the role of distribution, is changing. And we've talked about that a lot. You guys, you as part of the advisory council have, provided GTDC with a lot of input, and the distributors, of course, either directly or, through us. For you guys, it's a little different though, because, there's a lot of, legacy companies, if you will, that started with, hardware.
Yeah.
And, and then we saw a transition, right?
Yeah.
But in your case, that wasn't the case. And so tell me what you see from the role of Disty and sort of the evolution, and some of the things that are really good and some of the things that they have to continue to, work on to ensure that they are supporting you the way you would like to be supported.
Yeah, absolutely. So Riverbed was originally a hardware company. Our WAN-op technology was hardware, but we'd never have stocked it that I'm aware of at distribution. So we, always have drop ship. So we haven't leveraged that warehousing, the, pick, pack, ship function of distribution. But we are, absolutely evolving into a software and SaaS company over time. And I would say, I mentioned before, kind of the basic function of distribution really adds value to us. We do business only in US dollars, right? We use distributors around the world. They take that currency risk. They're right now taking financial risk, right? With not knowing what's happening with the economy. If they have net 60, day terms, things could really change in 60 days.
Yeah.
And, we're grateful for that. We're grateful for that. They do it on very lean margins. I know because I've worked closely with Disty through my career. They work on very lean margins. And so that basic function is really good. They also do give us reach into, managing partners that we just don't have the bandwidth to manage. We're not a huge company. We only have so many channel account managers in the field. And our really strong distributors are able to develop that next tier of partners, start to get them ramped up, start to, pass through some new leads. So, that's valuable to us as well. And then as we're evolving to be more of a SaaS company, distribution, we're really looking at distribution to say, what are they doing with other enterprise level vendors? How are they, offering that flexibility? And, how can they even just advise us on what we should be doing? Because they have that view across all the vendors and what works well and what we could do better to be more partner friendly. And so, we're looking at them for that. I would say we're probably not looking so much. We get a lot of input to do the Disty marketplaces. And I think that those are a great fit for SMB products, but I'm not so sure they're a great fit for enterprise products where things are highly configured and, So something might make sense as we start to go down market a bit, to put some of our solutions out there that are better fit for kind of small enterprise where there's a broader footprint.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, Meg, that we talked about at our event, and certainly you were there, which is, by the way, another term that's about to get overused, is ecosystems.
I know.
Right? That's the next one, but it is true that there is an ecosystem out there, and you just started to talk to it about relative to, certainly your partners, but there's also complementary vendors out there that you work with, right?
Absolutely.
And somebody has to kind of orchestrate all of that. And the notion, excuse me, that the distributors have become, what we call now ecosystem orchestrators, I think is valid. It's legitimate. and they're going to do it through their platforms. Obviously, that becomes really important. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is the fact that right now, I think the intelligence and the data that the distributors have is underutilized. In other words, I don't think they're leveraging it as they could be, and as they are all planning to, because if you listen to some of the ones that have introduced, their platforms, they would tell you this is what we plan to do. But I think the data piece becomes really important. And obviously, for certainly an SMB, because there's just so many more customers and so many more transactions.
Yep.
But I think also at an enterprise level, it could be important.
Oh, we leverage the data from distribution right now, right? Where, if we're looking for, who is the partner that sells the complementary technology into this vendor, that's probably a partner we want to, into the customer. That's a partner we'd like to recruit. Yep. So if they're, on board with one of our distributors, they have the relationship. They can make an introduction. They can help, provide our value proposition to that partner so that they know, why we would be a good add to them, right? Because obviously they have their own business and, they need to understand where we fit and how we can help them increase their profits. And I think distribution can help us do that. It's funny that you mentioned the data, because I remember I had a meeting with Tech Data probably 18 years ago, where they were talking about the wealth of their data and how they needed to do something. I think, and so this would be advice I would give to distribution. They have incredible things that they do, incredible things that help vendors, that help their partners, and in the end, help the customers. They need to package it better.
Yeah.
So they need to package it better, offer it. Vendors will pay, right? We will pay for something that is a proven model that we know delivers value. But sometimes we don't see the packaging, and or as a smaller vendor, right, it's sometimes hard for us to engage because things are very bespoke and the focus may be on the larger vendors.
Yeah.
So if they can package things up for the kind of their longer tail of vendors, I think that they will gain more traction. They will have less risk because I think they're under extreme pressure from the hyperscalers, in the market, and they are becoming services organization. That data and leveraging that data is a service, and so if they can do that, they will get further.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, and I think that was the point I was on regarding platforms. I think the platforms is going to enable them to do that, right? Packaging. It doesn't have to be a marketplace, right? It doesn't have to be, but it's a platform because it's got to be done from a technology standpoint, right? Because I experienced the same thing working with distributors as far back as 25 years ago in the PC space. Which of my solution providers and their customers are ready for a refresh cycle? That's data that we ought to have, right? Because we ought to know when the product was installed, and what that refresh cycle is. Extracting that data is hard sometimes because you have to have the process and you got to have the methodology to do it, and it can't be a sort of a random, kind of a let's do it as a project kind of a thing, right? So I think you're right, but in the discussions I'm having with the distributors and what I see that's going on from an investment standpoint, clearly that's a focus. So
I think that's so exciting. I think that's so exciting, and I'm a total complete data nerd. So it just puts a smile on my face to think that, they've had years and years and wealth of data, right? That would tell us, I know it would tell us, hey, if a customer buys X and Y, the next thing they're going to buy is Z, and we better get there and make sure we're ready to sell them Z.
Yep. Well, I think that's coming. I think, there's a lot going on. One of the things that I know, and, as we wrap this up, but one of the things that I know, you've been in the industry for a long time. I certainly have. One of the fun parts of it is it does keep evolving. And there is just so much going on, and it's exciting, and it's a good place to be. And you had a tremendous career here, and it's been I personally have enjoyed the watch the transitions, but you got to stay close to it too, because they happen very quickly and you can get away from you if you're not careful.
I think they can get away. And I think that AI, I mean, 90 days ago was the first time I ever touched Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's everywhere. My son's in college, they're using it, and they're using it like not nefariously, right? They're using it legitimately.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a marketing leader, a channel marketing leader, and she was telling me that she uses it almost every day, right? It just helps. It makes things faster, easier when, getting support from companies, using those kind of technologies. I can't even imagine the ways that that kind of smart technology, yes, it's scary, but used well, it's going to revolutionize the way that we interact with companies.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, Meg, look, I really appreciate you joining us today. And I mentioned it, but I want to mention it again, really appreciate your involvement in our advisory council, because that has been really helpful to us. Because one of the issues you have, in my role, is you kind of step away from the day-to-day, running the business. Sometimes you just can get out of touch quickly. And when I get in a room with, you and your peers on the advisory council, I get energized because the discussions are really relevant to what's happening in the marketplace. And that's really important. So I'd like to thank you for that. And also thank you for joining us, and continued success.
Thanks so much, Frank. I really do enjoy being involved with the GTDC. I learn something new every time we meet. So thank you. Thank you for running it. And it was nice to be with you today.